Good morning, friends. Okay, as most of you know, if you've been with me any length of time, I had a bakery, commercial bakery and coffee shop for 13 years in Guasave, Sinaloa, Mexico. And even though I don't want to work every day anymore, I still take custom orders. So this video is about preparing for a wedding on July 11th. And please stick with it. It has a very surprising ending. Alrighty then, today we're beginning on the wedding. I have that big container putting out there because I'm in the creating the menu phase. Last time we spoke, you saw some fudge brownie mixes over there on my chair and a couple of cake mixes, and I told you they were for an upcoming wedding. So yesterday we made GOOP. Now, in case you don't know, GOOP, and I'll put the recipe for this down below, but it's very simple. It's equal parts of flour, lard or shortening, and oil. And this is a cake release. And as you can tell by all the nooks and crannies in that little puppy, you need to have really good cake release or you're not going to get that design that is supposed to be embossed in the top of your brownie in this case. So one brownie mix makes one entire heart, and I have heart bases, so I'm going to make at least 2 of these, probably 4 of them, so that as they're eaten I can replace them on the mesa, the table, desserts table. So I'm going to put you on the tripod and you can see me doing the GOOP. Now, I don't usually use mixes, but I happen to have a whole bunch of them because before I had my kitchen as organized as I have it now, which is still horrible, but it's a lot better than it was. I think in a past video, yes, it was called Brownies and Pickles. Oh my God, I think I'm pregnant. Something like that. I don't remember the exact name, but I was making brownies and pickles in the same day. And the reason I was making brownies is because a young lady that I know here was selling strawberries and cream on the beach, and she wanted me to make brownies that she could just break up into bits on top of them, and chocolate chip cookies. So I bought a bunch of brownie mixes and a bunch of chocolate chip cookie mixes to help her with her business, and then she got a day job. It never happened. So I have all these brownie mixes sitting here. So I'm going to use them for the wedding because the person having the wedding, it's on a shoestring budget, and I'm trying to help her out as much as I can. So I'm going to use ingredients that I already have. Now these 2 molds back here, the round and the square, you can tell the square are quite shallow and the round are definitely more meaty. I'm going to be making those in brownies also. And the round ones, I'm going to be including raspberry powder inside of them, and I'm making a very thick chocolate mousse to go on the top, and it'll be sprinkled with a dust of raspberry powder over all of it. And the little square ones, I'm planning on frosting, probably with royal icing, because brownies aren't very wedding-ish, and royal icing is white. So I'm going to see if I can turn those little brownie squares white, and we'll see what we can do. Okay, so I'm going to put you up on the tripod so that you can watch getting the brownie mold together and getting the goop on it and all. And I'll mix up the brownies and pour it in the mold, and I'm going to be doing it in my little electric oven. Now, the electric oven, it is old, it is cruddy looking, and I feel bad every time I use it. But it's accurate temperature wise, and it bakes things well, and it's a quarter of the size of my gas oven. And I just, and in Mexico, during summer months, the government helps a little bit on electricity. They do not help on gas. So it's financially better, it's not as hot, and this whole part of the house doesn't have air conditioning, which I'll show you. It's a very large room. I'm going to be exposing myself here. This is the kitchen, that's the front yard, that's the front door, and then back in there, now my table is covered with stuff that we have pulled out for the wedding, so it's not quite as messy as it looks. But as you can see, this is a huge area, and up there you do see a mini split, and it is even lit, so you would think it works, but it doesn't. It came with the house and it has never worked. And this room is such a large open area that it takes a 2-ton unit, and I just don't have the money to buy that right now. So I'm trying to keep my heat down by using the small oven. And the food is in a mold. It's not like it's touching the sides of the oven anyway, but all that rust is just, it makes me sigh every time I open the door and look at it, because when it was sold to me, I thought it was stainless steel. And that is obviously not stainless steel. Alrighty, so let's get on to it. Okay, so it's normal. I left this out in the heat. Normally, I will keep it in the refrigerator, but I knew I was going to be using it, and I knew that this is a very complicated surface. So I was going to need to be able to really depend on getting it in everywhere. You need a very good coating, or something like this will not release well and give you the form in your cake or your brownie that you want. I also use this with giant cookies. Oh, what I was beginning to say was, it's normal if you leave it out in the heat for a little while for some oil to accumulate around the sides to separate, but it's a nice, as you can see, thick consistency. The recipe that I will be putting down for you isn't really that important, because it's not really specific measurements. It's just equal parts of either lard or shortening. Now I'm putting it in very thick right now, and that would goof up, lard, shortening, and flour. I get distracted while I'm working and trying to talk. Anyway, you'll notice that a lot of these places, like in here, are really filled up with the goop right now, and I will change that. I'm getting it in there on purpose very thickly, and then when it's time to move it up the sides, we will be taking that excess. But to begin, especially with something this complicated, you want it to be quite thick. Now, this is teaching you how to use goop on something this involved and intricate is kind of unfair. But you'll see, if I can get it out in one piece from this thing, you'll know that goop will work for you on any mold that you might have. You'll be confident and secure. Now, I have made many of these before. I will most likely include a couple of photos for you of past jobs, because this will not be getting decorated at this time. I'm making this in advance, and I chose to start with brownies, and next I'm going to do the cookies, because those things freeze well. And I'm making these in advance, and I'm going to package them well and put them in the freezer so that when it's time to decorate everything, I will be decorating everything at once and thereby being much more efficient than doing things once in a while. And I don't need to have all of the heat of the baking at one time, because when you're making enough desserts for 150 people, there's a lot of baking. They really love their parties and they really love their desserts when they get there. So I usually try to have 4 or 5 pieces per person. Now, as you see, I'm poking in with the bristles. It's a silicone brush, but I guess they're still bristles, to get into those deeper recesses, and then transferring that goop up to the sides because we want to have that detail of the pattern in the finished product. Now, in the finished product, usually, I'm going to have to play this a little bit by ear because they usually make these for Valentine's Day, for example, and for people's anniversaries and stuff. So weddings are traditionally just white, and I think she's going for gold rather than silver. So making a brownie, I'm not sure. I'll show you on the photos that I include of when I've done this before, that usually on that squiggle pattern that goes all the way around, I cover that with a red gel frosting. I'm trying to get some out of that now. Oh no, I should close this too early. And I usually put frosting in this groove that I'm cleaning right now as well, because that will be a raised space in the, it's a negative. So everything that is recessed right now in the mold will be an elevated place in the finished product. And we want it well greased, yes, but we still want the detail, so need to hit a happy medium there. Yeah, so the girl that this is for, I don't really know the bride that well. I know the bride's mother well, and it is her stepdaughter that is getting married, and the bride's mother has worked for me off and on for, oh gosh, possibly 15 years, at least 12. She helps me around the home. She helped me when I had my business. She worked part-time in the business, and she worked with me as a cake decorator. I used to have her make my millions of fondant butterflies, for example, if I had an event to do, and she would do a lot of the detail work. I'm just checking this out. I'm making sure that we're good enough. A little more out of those. All right, I think we're good. I'll be doing another one later, so I don't need to wash this yet. Very good. So let's get together our ingredients and make a brownie. Alrighty, now I did notice on my last video, which was the bulk tuna video, that there was an awful lot of noise made by the stainless steel spoon on the pan. So I greatly prefer using stainless steel for cleanliness, for durability and all, but I can imagine that the noise was rather bothersome to you guys. So I'm going to be using a wood spoon. Okay, so like I said, I don't usually use mixes. After having your own bakery for 13 years, you have your own recipes. So I will include my recipe down below of what I use and variations of it, because some people like cake-like brownies and some people like fudgy brownies, and there are different tastes. So I'll have instructions on how to make those various ways for you. Now, when you start a brownie mix or anything, check and make sure there's no lumps in your flour, because you don't want to over mix it. You don't want them to be tough. You just want to mix it long enough for the ingredients to be included, okay? Now in this mix, they want 1/4 cup of water, 2/3 of a cup of oil, and 2 eggs. Yep, 2/3 of a cup of oil. Okay, so let's go for that. 2/3 a cup of oil. Now, when you're measuring your liquids, you should measure them at eye level, because it looks much different from a different perspective, and you can actually incorrectly measure by looking down on it, you know, or up on it. But if you hold it up eye to eye to where it's right at the line, you know that you've got it correctly. 1/4 cup of water. All right, so pouring in the water. Pouring in the oil. To get the last bits, watch how much comes out from the scraping. It really does make a difference. I know people that are making videos don't like to do that because it's, you know, messes up the flow of the video. But this is actually for somebody. It's not just for a video. So I'm gonna do it the right way. Okay, woo. Now I'm gonna open this one over. Yeah, that's good, okay. I want to open it, I didn't the first time, but you want to open it over something else. So if there is any eggshell that gets broken or a problem, I know this wouldn't happen in the States for you very much, but it does here every once in a while. We buy flats of 30 eggs at a time, and every once in a while in one of those flats, you'll get a black egg, which would be very distressing if that was in our mix here. So now, do you see the way I'm turning the bowl with my hand while I'm doing the circular motion with the spoon, so that I get all of the edges, all of the sides? Alrighty. Make sure that there's no little pockets or anything left on the bottom. All right. We're ready to pour into our mold. Okay. Like I said, you don't want to mix your brownie mix too much, because you don't want too much gluten to form. You know, when you're making bread, you want gluten to form, so you need it, and you know, for a long time, and manipulate the dough quite a lot. But you want this to be more tender, and you don't want that much gluten to form. So, oh gosh, I miss my stainless steel spoon. It's got such a great edge. I can scrape everything out with it. This wooden spoon, I feel like I'm trying to knit with socks on my hands. All right, well, that's good enough. Now, you want to hit it a couple of times in case you have any air bubbles in there that are in the bottom, so that they come up to the top. Oops, nope, don't want that on the edge. Alrighty, now we're gonna go put this in the oven. All right, now I just wanted to show you how perfectly that goop works. Do you see all of those little details? It is very difficult to get baked goods to come out of a pan with all those little ridges and swirls and everything, you know, without having any mess ups. So I swear by the GOOP. It just works perfectly. Now, I allowed this to cool. It's not quite cool enough. Okay, well, I'll have to let it cool a little bit more. I'm going to wrap it in plastic, and I'm going to pop it in the freezer for when we need it for the wedding and get started on the second one. Okay, so what I'm showing you now is I'm beginning to work on some of the decorations for the wedding because these have to dry. And I'm making them out of fondant, and I'm trying a new fondant this time. I've used this chef or whatever it is before with a little chef dye on it. I've used it before, but this time it has the flavor of red fruits, strawberries and cranberries and blueberries and stuff like that. So a lot of people don't like the flavor of fondant, so I thought I would give that a go. Now, fondant, even when it's dry, will absorb liquid in a very humid environment, especially with heat and humidity combined. So in order to I'm making little white butterflies, as you can see, that go on the cakes and cupcakes, and they're in 3 different sizes. There's a small, there's a medium, and there's a large, and we've made 243 of them. So I bought this because I'm going to cover the main wedding cake in fondant, because it's very difficult for a July 11th outdoor wedding in Sinaloa to use any kind of frosting. They all melt. And I'm also trying to save the young lady a lot of money. So what you do when you want fondant to stand up under very hot and humid conditions is you mix in a chemical called Tylose. Now this is the CMC brand of Tylose, but it is a rolled fondant stabilizer. It's sodium carboxymethyl cellulose. And you mix some of this powder in with your fondant, and when it dries much harder, and it's very resistant to absorbing those humidity liquids from the air again. So we mixed all of this with Tylose ahead of time, and we used these sheets of aluminum foil to make the little V-shaped things so that the mariposas, the butterflies, have some motion, look like they're flying, and they're going to be fluttering all over our different desserts. Now, if you ever wonder why wedding cakes and dessert tables and things are so expensive, it's all the detail handwork that goes into them. Those 243 butterflies took us 3 hours to do today, and that's all we did. And she's skilled, that was Chavella, the lady that works with me. She is skilled in working with fondant, and so am I. And between the two of us, it took 3 hours to get out those 243 butterflies of 3 different sizes. And there also, we made all of the little, fan folded, the aluminum foil to make the little forms that they stay in so that they'll have, movement to their wings, etc. But the cleanup time. But it was 3 hours total to get the fondant out, weigh out the part that we wanted to use for the butterflies, and reserving the part that we're going to use for the main cake, because I'm going to cover the main cake in fondant that has the statue of the bride and groom on top of it. And I think that's going to be the top tier on a rustic, almost naked cake on the bottom. I don't really know yet completely. We'll get there. So far, we're trying to work out of whatever I have in stock left over from my business. Because Chavella and her family, she has a lot of children, and she has a very old mom that she takes care of. And they're very low income. So we're doing our best to do this on a shoestring. So I'm using mostly things that I already have. One of the reasons why we're using the brownies, I told you before, is the brownie mixes were left over from an order that I had before that got canceled. But also I have heart-shaped cake boards left over from Valentine's Day and stuff. So it'll be really easy to have them on a nice, you know, silver heart-shaped cake board, and that'll look pretty on the table as well. So yeah, we'll get on with it. Okay, this is something that I bought from my business ages ago. It was part of an order that was later canceled, and I never used it. So I think I'm going to use it for this wedding, and I'm going to try to make mini white powdered donuts. And I'm going to use this squeeze bottle to put the mixture in and go around, because this will fit just beautifully in my little oven. I'm going to give that a go. Here are my wet ingredients for the little donuts. It's milk, vanilla, Crisco, and eggs. And here are the dry ingredients of the flour and sugar and baking powder. And I'm going to mix them up together in this so that I can put them in those molds really easily. Well, I've never used this kind of manteca before. And it caused some little clumps that are clogging the tip. Seems like I worked them all out. Perfect. So one recipe does 2 batches in this thing perfectly. Wonderful. So there's our first batch, -1, that Chavella and I split in half to taste, and we both decided I'm going to cook them a little bit longer, and we're going to include more vanilla next time. Good afternoon, friends. Well, we're not going to continue with the wedding. The young lady, the bride, has become very ill, and she went to the doctor. She has no appetite, and she has a lot of lower abdominal pain. And they believe that she has cancer. And because of the symptoms that she is experiencing, they think that it's quite advanced. So the family has decided that they need to use the money for treatment and possible surgery for her instead of a wedding. Now, this has saddened me greatly. I do not know the girl in question well at all. I've only met her once and seen her one other time besides, but I know her stepmom very well for 15 years. And this family just goes through a lot. One of the things that they do is they take care of the elderly matriarch in their family, which is Chavella's mom. And Chavella's mom is blind, and she's very advanced in age. And her birthday is tomorrow. Today is Tuesday, July the 7th. And her birthday is on July 8th. And because the wedding was going to be on Saturday, they weren't really going to celebrate the mom's birthday because everybody was so busy with wedding preparations. But we made all those beautiful mariposas, butterflies for the cake and all of that, and for the desserts. And Chavella didn't want that effort to be wasted, so she asked if I would make her mother a birthday cake, and I'm going to decorate it with those butterflies. So a couple of the cake mixes that we had that we were going to use for the main wedding cake, I'm going to make a 2-layer butter cake using a full mix for each layer, and I'm going to fill it with strawberry jam and I have freeze-dried strawberries and the butterflies to decorate it on the top. And I have a cream cheese buttercream frosting that I'm going to be using for the top. Now, I purchased the buttercream frosting because all these changes were very last minute, and I don't have enough time to go to the big town where I could get Crisco to make a heat stable frosting. I was planning on using fondant to cover one of the cakes, the main cake, and royal icing to cover the smaller cakes. But her mom really likes cream cheese buttercream, so I purchased 2 containers of cream cheese buttercream at the market yesterday at Walmart. However, they're always way too soft, too liquidy to use very much for decoration. So I will be sifting some powdered sugar and adding that to the cream cheese buttercream, and I will be adding more vanilla to it, and you know, a few tablespoons if it needs any more liquid of milk to make it richer. So I'm going to be making the cake today, and I'm going to be delivering it tomorrow, and I'll take you along with me on making it. Okay, cake mix baking. There's ways that you can always make cake mixes better to where they taste like bakery cakes, okay? For example, when you're putting in, when they tell you to put in vegetable oil, if you substitute butter, it's gonna taste better. When they tell you to put in water, if you substitute milk, it's gonna taste better and be richer and more moist because of the fats in the milk, okay? And I am baking these from cake mixes, like I said, and their directions only talk about 8 or 9 inch round pans and using 2 of them. Well, Chavella has a very large family, and I don't want to do, you know, a little cake. So I'm changing it to a 10 inch round pan. Now I'm using a light colored bakery grade aluminum 10 inch cake pan. And for that, I'm only going to use 1, and I'm going to use 1 cake mix for the bottom layer of the cake and another cake mix for the top layer of the cake. And I'm going to fill it in between with a jar of strawberry jam, and I'll show you how to do that when I decorate it. And obviously you have to change up the times and all quite a bit. Because instead of baking 2 skinny cakes, I'm baking 1 thick but more spread out cake. So in this instance, I am dropping the heat for 350 to 325 degrees instead, so that the cake will cook slower, and that will keep the edges of the cake from getting too browned and crispy. Now, another thing, if you want to keep your cake from doming, use cake strips around the outside of the pan. If you don't have cake strips, that's okay. I know how to Mickey Mouse that. If you just take some old kitchen towels and kind of accordion fold them and wrap them around the cake pan and pin it to where you get the proper size, okay? Then get them wet. Wring them out to where they're still, you know, more than damp but not drippy, you know, and you put them on the outside of your pan. And what that does, the reason why your cake domes is because your leavening agent inside the cake mix, whether it's baking powder or baking soda or both, the edge cooks faster because the heat gets to that metal edge, and the center cooks slower. So the edge cooks while the cake is still this height, but this height. But the center, because it doesn't have an edge on the metal to conduct the heat, continues to rise, which is why you get a dome on your cakes. So if you put those wet towels around the outside of your pan, if you don't have cake strips, or you wet your cake strips and put them on, if you do have them, that slows down the baking process on the outside as well, so that the sides have time to rise the same amount as the center. And you don't have to cut off that dome trying to even out your cake to flatten it out well enough to be able to frost it, you know. Now, before I knew that, and if you don't have cake strips or you don't want to do that with the towels and you just cut off the dome, you can use those dome pieces for cake pops. Cake pops are nothing but crumbled up cake, half cake and half frosting. And then you mix that all together and you roll them up and you put a
scriddle, a skim, skirt.
Straw? All I was thinking of was popote in Spanish. You put a straw into it and freeze it. Then you dip it in chocolate, either white or dark chocolate, depending upon what your flavor is and what you're going to use it for and how you're going to decorate it, and then you've got cake pops. So there's definitely things to do with those cake pieces, or you can make a trifle, which is lovely, which is just layers of cake chunks and fresh fruit and whipped cream. And you layer it up in a nice glass bowl so that it looks really pretty, and it's a delightful summer dessert. So anyway, I'm going to get to that. So the cake, I'm going to bake it at 325 instead of 350. And being thicker than normal and larger than normal, it's going to take 50 to 55 minutes in the type of pan that I'm using. So at about 45 minutes, I'm going to open up the oven and I'm going to do the toothpick test on it. Now, if you don't have a toothpick, you can use a butter knife. You can use a cake tester. You can use a variety of things. The point is to stick it in, and if you pull it out and it's clean, there isn't any, goopy cake mix on it still, then it's cooked through to the center. That's no problem. I use toothpicks, but I used to use a butter knife before I regularly stocked toothpicks. So I'm going to cook them one layer at a time in my little electric oven. And when you take it out of the oven, when it's done, you want to let it cool 10 to 15 minutes inside the pan before you turn it out, because the cake is just too delicate when it's that hot and you can easily break your cake. So let it cool to 10 to 15 minutes. And then I put my cooling rack on top of my cake pan and then flip it. Okay, to make sure that it just transfers lovely onto the cooling rack, no problem. And that's what I'm gonna do. So I already coated my pan with GOOP. I'm waiting right now because when my son and I went grocery shopping, I foolishly told him to put all the butter in the freezer. And I forgot that. So I'm waiting for some butter to thaw enough for me to use it for my recipe. And I don't want to nuke it and have it, microwave it, and have it be completely liquid, because that does affect the texture of the cake a bit. So as soon as it is soft enough to work with, we'll be getting on that. Okay, now, as I'm getting ready to prepare this, I discover that I don't have enough milk. And I just got through telling you, if you want a bakery-style cake out of a mix, to use milk instead of water. Well, the recipe says 3/4 of a cup of water. So I put in a half a cup of water and 1/4 of a cup of media crema, or medium cream. And this way, if I used all cream, it would be too thick, it would be too much. But with a half a cup of water and only 1/4 cup of the medium cream, the fat in the milk will help it to taste richer and will help to make the cake more moist. Okay, so when I set the phone down, I scraped out my cream, water, and egg mixture really well, and my melted butter into the well. Now we're only going to mix it up enough to just mix it up here at the table, and then I'm going to go over to the counter and use an electric mixer, but I don't have an electric line that reaches here or any place here to plug it in. So we'll be back when I go to the other location. Sorry for the shadow. Now I will be mixing with this hand mixer for a solid 4 minutes. And it's very important that you actually give it that much time, because for a cake, you want it to rise well. Well, the way that it rises is either the baking soda or baking powder through a chemical reaction releases air bubbles, okay? But those air bubbles have to be trapped, and you do that by raising the gluten in the flour. So just like kneading bread so that it will rise properly, developing those gluten strands, you need to develop gluten in your cake batter. So I will be mixing this for 4 minutes to develop the gluten so that when all of those little air bubbles form, it has the gluten strands around it to encapsulate it and keep it like little balloons throughout your entire cake. Okay, you can see I've just finished it by the stuff still dripping off the blades, and it is so smooth and creamy and wonderful, okay? So I'm gonna have to get this into the pan right away, and I can now begin preheating my oven because I'm using the electric oven, and if you look over there, I only have one plug. So since I was using the mixer, I couldn't be preheating the oven. So now we're going to preheat the oven while I get this into the pan. And remember, we're going for 325 for this instead of the standard 350 because we're using a much larger pan than what they tell you to use in the directions. And it's going to be a thicker cake and thereby has to cook for longer, and we don't want it to burn. Okay, now I have my cake strips soaking, and you have to soak them for 15 minutes before using them. Now, mine are all gnarly looking because I had a professional bakery and I've had these for years, but they're all pretty and lilac when you first buy them. Anyway, so there's our cake prepared with our cake strips wrapped around it, going in the oven. Okay, this is cake number 2. I'm doing, one cake for each tier, so that one's greased over there, ready to go. This one calls for a cup of water. So I put 2/3 of a cup of water in here, and I'm gonna fill the rest of it up in media crema or medium cream to help make it richer. So once again, that's the butter in there. And I mixed the eggs with the water and cream mixture. Now this mix says to mix it with the hand mixer for 2 minutes. So I'm gonna set you down so I can scrape out this measuring cup and we'll get on with it. Okay, now to keep your cakes nice and moist, you wanna make what's called a simple syrup, which is approximately equal parts of water and sugar. And you want to dissolve that sugar in the water. It will not dissolve completely here. I'm going to heat it up in the microwave, but I'm going to get it started here to dissolve what I can, because I don't want it to be very hot. And then I'll put it in the microwave and stir it, about 10-second blasts, and stir it to dissolve it. And when it's completely dissolved, I'll show you what to do with it in your cakes. And we're getting a lot more dissolved here now, little by little. Okay, I'm gonna go put this in the microwave for a second, and I'll be back. Okay, so when you start your cake, put some frosting on your cake board, and that keeps your cake from moving around. It glues it in spot. And I let this one dome so I can show you how to cut it off. Okay, so there are several ways of doing this. One way is to put toothpicks in all around at the level that you want it to be, and then use a piece of dental floss to wrap around the cake using the toothpick as a guide and pulling the two directions, the two pieces in opposite directions, and the dental floss cuts the cake for you. I'm just going to do it with a little serrated knife because I'm used to doing it. Now once you get your surface, I've got my simple syrup right there, and a little silicone brush. You want to get your simple syrup up and generally just coat the entire surface of your cake with the simple syrup, which guarantees that your cake will not dry out. Okay, so you can see the entire thing is moistened, including the outside edge. Now the outside edge, it's going to take a little bit longer for it to soak into there because of the little crust that it has, but I just wanted to give that some time to soak in while I'm making the frosting. All right, now this is the frosting I'm using, which I've never used before, and it's actually quite a bit thicker than normal. I might be able to use this just as it is. Normally it's way too soupy, but I think this will hold what I want it to do. So it'd be better if it were a little bit thicker. I'm going to sift some powdered sugar into here. I'm going to add some more vanilla because the flavor seems very artificial, and I'd like some more real vanilla flavor in here. And I'd also like it to be a bit stiffer so that I can pipe some decent stuff onto it. Now, when you're getting ready for your frosting, I like to use a piping bag, of course, but you don't have to have a piping bag. If you're using a piping bag, I put the tip in first. Then I take a pair of scissors and I score right above where the end of the cuts of the tips are, you know, the design, and I score it all the way around, pull the tip back, cut it where it's scored, and then push the tip back in again. If you do not have piping bags, you can use a regular Ziploc bag, and you can use the corner of your Ziploc bag. And if you have a tip, you can insert the tip in the corner. If you don't have a tip, I will show you in a few minutes how to cut your Ziploc bag into a star tip so that you can decorate your cake like a pro. Okay, to make this a bit richer, yeah, great English. A bit richer, I can talk. I added in 2 teaspoons of vanilla and 1.5 tablespoons of the media crema. Now I'm going to sift 1/4 to 1/2 cup. I have to see ultimately what the texture is like, of powdered sugar. Now you always want to sift your powdered sugar because you don't want any lumps in your frosting, and powdered sugar has a tendency to make little stones in it, especially in a humid environment like mine is. Okay, so even though I added more vanilla and the cream, you can see it's got a little bit thicker consistency from the powdered sugar, which means it'll pipe better. And I wanted to show you what I meant by scoring the tip, you know, the bag around. See how just above I scored it with the scissors all the way around, which tells me where to cut the bag. Now you just back out the tip a little bit, and sometimes you can just pull it off. Ah, I got lucky. Okay, then you push your tip down in very snugly, and you're going to get a good clean flowers, you know, stars off of that tip because there's no bag interfering. Now I'll show you how to fill your bag without making a mess. Okay, so my tip is down inside the cup, and you open the bag up inside the cup and fold the edges down around it, and that holds it up for you while you spoon your frosting into the cup and you don't have a big mess. Because it's really hard to avoid getting frosting on these parts of the bag, and you want to keep that clean so that your hands don't get too grody. Okay, now you're going to want to create a dam around the outside of your cake so that it will hold in your filling. In this case, I'm going to be using strawberry jam. It's hard to do this with one hand. I'm going to be using strawberry jam inside the middle of the cake. And you don't want your strawberry jam to leak out to the outside because that would affect your finished product with all of the white frosting. All right. Now you see how the jam holds that in place so that it doesn't leak out the sides when you put the next level on. And another little tip is while it is still in the jar, Stir your jam up so that it's not really clumpy, and it will spread a lot more easily on your cake surface. Well, I'm finally getting somewhere. This frosting is so soft. You can tell by my shell border. It is just limp as heck. So I've been popping it into the freezer every few minutes to try to chill it because I don't have room in my fridge. So let me finish it up. Okay, let's see. I put big ones all the way around with little ones in between them, going opposite directions. She wanted me to use a lot of the butterflies. I put butterflies in between the sugar flowers. I think it's pretty. I wish I had found my tints, but so that I could have tinted it and then the white butterflies would pop. But considering what I had to work with, that's not bad. Okay, resilient people. As sad as the cancellation of the wedding was, when the cake arrived on Wednesday, Chabella's mom is one of 12 sisters. And all of the sisters that are still living were gathered together at one place for her where I delivered the cake. And she was a happy camper, and they were having a good time anyway. The cake was well received, and they had music playing and were dancing, and life goes on. And we don't know yet what the situation is with the young lady. She had some tests this week, and today is Saturday the 11th, the day that the wedding was going to be. And I will see Chabella on Monday, and I will find out news about the young lady and see how the tests went. But life happens. Anyway, thank you very much for being here. Oh, I wanted to mention, that's right. So I gave you the GOOP recipe. I gave you 2 different brownie recipes. I gave you a recipe for baking those little donuts. I gave you tips on how to work with fondant. I gave you tips on how to create a flat cake. And if you have a domed cake, how to get rid of it and still have a nice level top. I talked to you about how to richen up a cake mix cake or a brownie mix or anything. Now, one of the things I didn't mention is that another way of making a cake mix richer is to add an extra egg. But both of these were butter cake mixes, so they already had 3 eggs in them because they wanted the color of the yolks. So I did not add another egg. In this case, most cake mixes tell you to put in 2 eggs, and I add the extra egg in then for those. But okay, I showed you how to fill a piping bag. I was going to show you how to make a Ziploc bag into a piping bag and tip. But the more I thought about it, there are several different ways that you can make your own piping bags and that you can make your own tips. So I think I'm going to do a video on that and show you out of both plastic bags, using an actual piping bag but you don't have a tip, or using parchment paper to make a bag, or to make a bag with tip. Anyway, I'll do a whole video on just that. All right, you guys, you have a wonderful day. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for coming back, if you're coming back, and welcome if you're new. And I hope you have a wonderful day. Toodles.